In Boston, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, Tesla is feeling the burn. 2 senior executives resign, and Musk smokes pot in a bizarre interview with comedian Joe Rogan. And Massachusetts is the 7th state to legalize marijuana. We will look at the role tech is playing in how the drug is being regulated. Plus, Alibaba founder Jack Ma is considering life after heading Asia's biggest company. Do not miss our exclusive interview on what's next for him. But first, to our top story, more turmoil at Tesla. Shares of the electric car maker take a dive after 2 senior executives announced they are leaving the company. One was Chief Accounting Officer Dave Morton, who's been with Tesla for less than a month. The other was Gabrielle Toledano, the head of human resources, who's been on a leave of absence and told Bloomberg News that she won't rejoin the company. That news came hours after CEO Elon Musk was seen smoking marijuana in an interview with the comedian Joe Rogan in a more than 2.5-hour podcast. Musk opened up about the difficulties of turning Tesla into an electric car giant, saying, quote, "It's very difficult to keep a car company alive." Joining me now to discuss, Bloomberg's Dana Hull in San Francisco, and on the phone, we have Gene Munster, co-founder and managing partner of Loop Ventures. Dana, I want to start with you. Walk us through the events of the last 48 hours.
Okay, Musk went on this podcast. It was a very long interview. He talked about flamethrowers and artificial intelligence. He smoked a blunt. This morning, before the market opened, you were seeing shares down a little bit, I think because of that appearance. But then Tesla issued an 8K in which they announced that Dave Morton had resigned. Dave had only been at the company for a month. And then about an hour later, I confirmed that Gabby Toledano, the chief people officer who's been on a leave of absence, was not coming back to the company. So it's just been kind of like a triple whammy. The bonds have taken a hit, the shares have taken a hit, and just the narrative of executive turmoil at Tesla just can't continue going on.
Dave Morton did release a statement saying he just wasn't prepared for this level of public scrutiny, but he still believes in Tesla. That said, Gene, it seems like this is a self-inflicted PR crisis. What is Elon Musk doing?
I think he's just trying to, be himself and take this kind of unconventional roadmap. And despite the board urging him and trying to put some rails around how he does and interacts with social media, so I think that there is a piece that he just wants to be himself, and he's going to do that whether people like it or not. I think that there's also a part in. Please forgive me for trying to look at the bright side of this, but I think that there is a part where he is feeling presumably confident about how things are going. I would suspect that if there was going to be some negative news around profitability or Model 3 production in September, he wouldn't be out doing these things. And so what is he doing? I think he's kind of setting up in some ways, signaling to people that he's, at least in the near term, feeling good about business.
Meantime, taking a look at his statements to some of these other publications, The Guardian reached out to Musk asking for a comment on the marijuana smoking interview. He called them an insufferable publication. BuzzFeed has a story out with an email from Musk in which he refers to this person in Thailand that he's been having this public feud with as a child rapist. This is the same person he apologized for calling a pedo. Dana, what are you hearing from company spokespeople? Do they clearly not have control of him? Or is this part of some grander plan?
I think what people need to realize is, look, Elon Musk is Tesla Communications. He's also the crisis. So everyone always asks me, when is Tesla going to hire a crisis comms team? Elon is the comms and he is the crisis right now, and it's very self-inflicted. But he's not likely to change. Elon's going to Elon, and he's always sort of done things his own way, and has a very intimate relationship with his fans and his followers and his customers via social media. I agree with Gene. I think he probably went on Joe Rogan because he thought it was a good idea, and he, likes to kind of shoot the breeze with people about topics that interest him. It was a wide-ranging interview about flamethrowers and AI and all this other stuff. I just think that the optics are not good, and the big tell is just always how the shares react. I mean, if so that when the shares plummet because you've got all these things going on, you would think that there'd be an effort internally to right the ship, but he's not showing any signs of changing, and I don't think the board really has the power to make him change at this point.
Well, what's ironic is this is a person who, has said he needs to be on the factory floor 24/7. He's sleeping there. He can barely go to his own brother's wedding, and yet he's sitting for more than 2.5 hours for a podcast. Gene, we've had investors and analysts on over and over again who say they still believe, despite all of this, that Elon Musk is still the right person to be leading this company. Do you still believe he is the right person to lead this company?
The simple answer is yes. I believe that. I believe that the company will be successful. Undoubtedly, his actions are making it harder to support them. But at the end of the day, what this really boils down to is, can they produce more than 55,000 Model 3s per quarter? They'll probably do 55,000 this September quarter at a 20% gross margin. If they do that, none of this matters, that they will become profitable and get what we call escape velocity. The part that's particularly painful for me as a supporter to this is there is what I'll say is a 15% chance that I'm wrong and that something doesn't go right around the profitability or the production and that they will have to go and raise money again. And the standard for investors is different than standard for a voter. All his behavior is reminiscent of some political behavior right now. But investors are not going to be as generous in giving a pass in this type of behavior. And whether it's legal or illegal doesn't matter. It's illegal in the minds of investors. And so I think that that's the part. I'm still clearly an investor. I believe in this story and think that the story can be multiple times bigger in the future. But it does beg the question, the 15% chance I'm wrong, my escape plan just got a little bit more tight.
Dana, Gene, they're drawing a parallel between Musk's behavior and that of our very own president. Are you hearing from other analysts and other investors, Dana, that maybe he isn't the right person to lead this company, or do they share Gene's view that, yes, he still is, with a caveat?
I think people really want to see a COO. I mean, you're hearing over and over again, like, gosh, can't they just get a COO like Gwen Shotwell to run Tesla? People have asked Gwen point blank if there's a possibility that Elon could clone her, if she has a twin sister somewhere. I mean, the difference between the two companies is extraordinary in that sense. But as far as we know, there is not an active search for a COO. And I mean, if Musk stepped down, he is so intertwined with the brand. He is the chairman of the board. He is the CEO. He is the largest shareholder. He is the public face of the company. I just can't imagine who could fill those shoes. But so I'm hearing more that people would really like to see them hire a COO rather than Musk stepping down himself.
But Gene, with all of this going on, is Tesla going to be able to recruit the talent that it desperately needs?
I think that ultimately they will, because it's such a big mission and such a unique opportunity to have an impact on really the world. As crazy as that sounds, their mission statements gets lost in this circus, which their mission statement is to accelerate the globe's adoption of renewable energy. And I think there are people who, despite all the internal friction, I think would be willing to work there. I'd also point out, too, is that this is a particularly important part of Tesla in terms of their trajectory over the next 30 to 180 days. And I think that once they get past that and get some stability, I suspect that the pressure cooker will start to dial back, and I think that the ability to recruit and, importantly, maintain talent will improve dramatically.
All right, Loop Ventures managing partner and co-founder Gene Munster. Always great to have your views here on the show, Gene, and Bloomberg's Dana Hull. I know you'll keep pushing ahead on this story for us. Thank you both. Well, InfoWars and its owner, Alex Jones, have been banned from Twitter. The social media site tweeted, "We permanently suspended Alex Jones and InfoWars from Twitter and Periscope based on new reports of tweets and videos that violate our abusive behavior policy, in addition to the account's past violations." A video Jones posted of himself harassing a reporter outside the social media hearings on Capitol Hill Wednesday may have been the trigger for this particular ban. Twitter has been under pressure to take action against the conspiracy theorist who has spread false accusations about the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, saying it was a hoax amongst many, many other things. Coming up, genetic engineering, biotech, aerospace may be the hotbed for the most revolutionary technologies, but the time needed to bring these innovations from lab to market doesn't always appeal to investors. Now, we will hear about how MIT's venture arm, The Engine, is trying to change that. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Investors are notorious for backing startups with speedy market turnarounds. But what about companies with game-changing technologies in areas like biotech or aerospace that may need more time, a more long-term investment? Katie Ray calls these sectors tough tech. And as CEO of MIT-founded venture firm The Engine, she's attempting to bring more funding to these ambitious technology companies. She joins us now from studio in Boston. Katie, what exactly do you mean by tough tech?
Well, the way I think of tough tech is it is people, engineers, scientists, really tackling what I think of as the world's biggest problems. And often these things need time to be nurtured, time to work out technical risk, but the results of them can be transformational to the world. So that's how we think of tough tech.
So how much time are we talking about here? Are we talking about how long it's going to take us to get a rocket to Mars, or 5 years?
You know, I think there's a range. I think some of them take between 1 and 4 years longer than other kinds of tech startups, and some could take as long as 15 years longer. But, you know, some of those really ambitious projects, like, you know, what if we had infinite energy because of fusion? That could be really worth the wait. If you think about the impact that could have on climate change, it would be tremendous. So, you know, or could we grow a human kidney? These are all really important things that could change lifespan, could change how our planet functions, but some of these take longer.
So give us some examples of these ambitious projects that you're funding and whether they're seeing progress.
Yes, so you know, typically we're funding people as they're coming out of a lab in one of the major universities here in Boston, MIT, Harvard, you know, et cetera. And what we see is, you know, we try to help form the companies. So it's usually 3 to 5 people deeply steeped in whatever problem they're trying to solve. You know, these are often accidental entrepreneurs. They're PhDs who never knew they would be entrepreneurs. But what we see is they set out a very ambitious technical and business planning cycle. And the progress we often see in the first year is to take out some of the most important technical risk, which will give more people, more funders, you know, the ability to see beyond these early risks into how they could develop into large companies. So, you know, we started a little over a year ago investing. We now have, you know, 13 investments in very broad-ranging areas. One I mentioned earlier is in fusion. It's a company called Commonwealth Fusion. They are looking to create kind of the next generation of fusion. It's a wonderful team out of MIT. You know, they have 2 major milestones until they can be in market. One is 3 years from now. That for many people is too long, but if you look at the impact, if they prove out their technical risk in the next 3 years, their company will be much more valuable at that point. Or we have things in, you know, biotechnology that often there's a, you know, 15-month to 2.5-year life cycle that the company has to get through. But we are watching our companies, even in the first year, get through important technical and business milestones, raise more capital, and be on their way to creating important companies. So it's not like tough tech takes forever. We still are impatient about the next milestone, but you have to see over the long term that you have to develop these things with longer vision.
is the goal to make money?
Yes. The goal is to create, many very valuable companies that will have worldwide market and very large market capitalization at the end of the day. Yes.
And are you looking beyond Boston or focused primarily on Harvard and MIT right now?
We are focused mainly in Boston, but we get entrepreneurs from all over the world. So if they want to come here, we can also look at investing in those companies. But
so
often there's a physical manifestation. Yeah.
I'm curious about the pipeline of the entrepreneurs and scientists that you are seeing. Technology has a diversity problem, and you are at the sort of ground level where entrepreneurs and scientists are getting new opportunities. I mean, are you seeing a diversity of talent? Is reaching a diversity of talent something that you're thinking about?
It's absolutely core to what we do. Being aligned with MIT, that they have a rich history of caring about creating a diverse class of students, and when you look at their graduate programs, there's a lot of diversity, both people from around the world, many women, people of color who are in their graduate programs, and this is true of most of our major universities. So there is a very diverse talent pool to draw from, but then we still know that we have to encourage more people, more women, more people of color to actually found companies. And so it's a piece of work that we do all the time. But I think the great part about where we're starting from is that the talent pool of proto-entrepreneurs, people that might become entrepreneurs, is quite diverse.
All right, Katie Ray, CEO and managing partner of The Engine. We will keep our eyes on the tough tech as it comes to fruition. Coming up, Jack Ma is looking beyond his life at Alibaba. He will share his thoughts on his own future and the future of his business in our exclusive interview next. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. In just 20 years, Jack Ma went from English teacher to world-renowned business leader and China's richest man. Now he is laying the groundwork for a future after Alibaba, the company he co-founded and turned into an e-commerce giant. Our China correspondent Tom McKenzie sat down with Ma in Hangzhou to talk about his philanthropic vision.
Company like Alibaba, we have so much resources, so many talents, so much influence. We got 600 million people using us almost every month. I worried if we do not put those kind of love, respect, responsibility into our business model, do not bury these things to our employees, this giant Alibaba could destroy a lot of things. Do good things, do bad things. So technology is very cold, people say, but you have to make the organization warm. People are warm.
Are you succeeding in that mission?
10 years ago, when I say we should put 0.3% of the total revenue of Alibaba into the philanthropy and protect the environment education. Well, at that time, nobody cared. I mean, 0.3% Alibaba, you have no revenue. That's all right. Board say, go ahead. Now we have such a big revenue. And I say, we have to do that. It's not 0.3% of the profit. It's the revenue.
In terms of technology, how do you bring that to play in your vision for transforming education?
Everything we taught the students in the past 100 years is about knowledge, about the science, about the industry. But in the future, what we teach the kids is about innovation, creative, constructive. How can you do the things that a machine cannot do, or cannot do better than human being? That is about education. I'm I'm thinking all the time about that.
That would be a big focus for you.
Yeah. I can be a teacher and a mentor to many young entrepreneurs. I don't call myself a successful business people, but I am very successful on life. I have gone through a lot of tough decisions, tough days. These can be very good for many young people. I'm not going to teach maths. I'm not going to teach English. I'm not going to teach business in the schools. But I'm going to teach young people how to face challenges.
When you communicate with your counterparts in the West, can that help bridge divides?
I hope so, and I think it will. There's one thing that we are all in common, that people in China, people in America, we all have the heart of love, respect, and trust. This is the common language we should have. As I said, the first technology revolution caused World War I. Second technology revolution caused World War II. Now we are third technology revolution. What happened? We should not have war, but if there's a war, the war should fight against the poverty, disease, environment. Should be together. We should find the common things that we're working together. That will build up the trust. It's easy to complain. It's easy to finger points. But we got somebody say, this is the problem. If we work together, it's the opportunity for all of us. And that is something that I hope I can do.
You employ more women than many other tech companies in China. How important is gender equality for the company?
Oh, it's so important. Last century, it's the competition of muscles. This century is the competition of wisdom, of experience, of care. We have like more than 50% of the employees in our company are women. 34% of senior management are women. This is one of the secret sauce of Alibaba. We feel so proud that we have a lot of women leaders. It's the soft power in it. It's not the machine guns. It's the care.
Alibaba Executive Chair Jack Ma speaking exclusively with our China correspondent Tom McKenzie. Still ahead, cannabis stocks heating up, fueled by upcoming recreational sales in Canada and a growing market in the United States. We'll take a look at the tech behind the drugs regulation in just a moment. And we will talk about Facebook, from privacy scandals to lawmaker scrutiny. Can Facebook bounce back? This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in Boston. Pot stocks are heating up, and it's not because of Elon Musk. The North American Marijuana Index has gained over 50% since mid-August, fueled by upcoming recreational sales in Canada and a growing market in the U.S. Bloomberg TV got an inside look at the tech driving the rollout of retail sales in Massachusetts, the next state to start in what could be a multi-billion-dollar industry on the East Coast.
The next state in the U.S. to sell recreational marijuana is gearing up slowly. Pot sales are legal in Massachusetts as of July 1st, but by law it can't be sold until tested at a licensed lab to certify products are free from mold and dangerous pesticides.
The biggest obstacle has been the labs not being licensed to be able to test it, and before anything can be sold, it's got to be tested.
And now it can. Marijuana testing lab CDX Analytics is one of two that won preliminary state approval. CEO Brian Strasnick runs the lab that has been testing medical marijuana since 2016.
We have about 13 or 14 clients in the medical marijuana space.
Clients like Netta send flower, concentrates, and edibles from their 100,000 square foot grow house to CDX for testing before selling to medical consumers at their dispensaries.
We're probably testing about 60 samples a day. We expect that to just go crazy once recreational comes on board. I would imagine that we'll either triple or quadruple our samples probably in the next year.
CDX Chief Science Officer Brianna Cassidy oversees testing in the lab.
Generally, a full profile test will take between 48 and 72 hours.
How labs test marijuana is key to their business plans. One technique uses a petri dish to show harmful organisms. CDX is betting millions on a DNA-based technique.
We're cracking the cells open and quantifying the DNA. We get a snapshot of what microorganisms at what ratios are present on the cannabis on the shelf.
Which technique works better is up for debate. In either case, the license to test will cultivate sales.
Certainly by the end of September, beginning of October, I think the dispensaries that are up and running now will start to be able to sell.
The dispensaries and labs still need to be inspected, and the state needs to roll out seed-to-sale software to monitor marijuana at all stages. Once underway, the market in Massachusetts is expected to hit $325 million this year and reach $1 billion by 2020.
Well, right now there's no profitability because it's been all money going out to get the infrastructure up and running. But I'm hoping that by the first quarter of 2019 we'll be showing a pretty significant profit.
Massachusetts is the 7th state to legalize sales of recreational marijuana and the first on the East Coast, where it could prompt neighbors, Maine, Vermont, New York, and New Jersey, to follow.
We have the format and the infrastructure in place to really be able to duplicate this all over the country. It's just the infancy.
Now, a startup known for its work designing made-to-order microbes for customers is also getting into the cannabis game through a $122 million tie-up. Ginkgo Bioworks has inked a deal with the Canadian lab Kronos to make marijuana compounds. The company's co-founder and CEO, Jason Kelly, joins us now. So, Jason, you guys started in the fragrance business. Talk to us about what exactly you do and what the legalization of marijuana means for you.
Yeah, happy to. And I'm glad Elon Musk keeping cannabis in the news for all of us. So Ginkgo started in the fragrance industry. So what we would do is take the genes from say like a plant like a mint, right? So you get mint oil from a mint leaf. We would take the genes from mint, move them over into brewer's yeast, right? Like the kind of yeast you would use to make beer. You brew it up. Instead of beer coming out, mint oil comes out. It's a lower cost of goods, more stable supply. You're not subject to weather and things like that. And so we saw that technology and said, well, we could apply this in the cannabis industry to produce some of the key ingredients that people are actually looking to the plant to get, whether that's for recreational or medicinal uses. And so that was the original technology at Ginkgo that led to the partnership with Kronos.
Now, you have a PhD in bioengineering from MIT, so I know you can explain this and hopefully in layman's terms, but as I understand it, you can, for example, if marijuana gives you the munchies, quote unquote, and makes you want to eat, you can make it not do that. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, or like say it doesn't smell great for a lot of people, right? So if you think about what you're getting when you're taking the entire flower, from the cannabis plant, you're getting all kinds of things in there, right? Some of them don't smell good. Some of them are things that make you hungry, right? But it turns out there's only a few, and with Kronos we have a list of 8 key ingredients. Some of the ones that are well known are things like THC or CBD oil, for example. But there's others that are known to have really positive effects, whether that's psychotropic or medicinal, right? So CBD oil, for example, is CBD's first FDA-approved drug from cannabis just about 3 months ago, a company called GW Pharma for epilepsy, right? So those are ingredients that if you make them in isolation, you can get kind of what you want without all the stuff you don't. And this is why I think you see a lot of interest in this, particularly around things like beverages and edibles, and when you're not Elon Musk doing smoking a blunt or something, but rather trying to do an actual like a beverage you could have in a bar. And so I think people see that as the future for the technology, and this type of approach, biotech, is the way you could make it.
Well, and Elon Musk smoking marijuana, even though it's legal in California, still has this stigma around it. What are the sort of regulatory and social issues how will that impact you?
Yeah, I think this is I think a key question around this technology, and it's sort of like if you look at the story goes, I think, around like Steve Jobs, for example, right? Talked a lot about using all kinds of recreational drugs and that having all kinds of positive effects for him, right? So I think there's an interesting thing where it's legal technology, even in the tech industry, for example. There's been a history around this stuff. But at the same time, there's a stigma associated with it. And I think what's happening is, as you're seeing it becoming legalized, people are recognizing, well, what are the other options, right? Like today, alcohol is a popular recreational drug. It's not the safest thing. It's not the healthiest thing. And so I don't know if you saw about a month ago, Constellation Group, which is the owners of Corona, invested about $4 billion into a Canadian cannabis company. And so you're seeing the big alcohol companies look at this and say, all right, the corner is turning. This is going to be both a threat and an opportunity for us, and it's going to give people more options. If, for example, they're someone who alcohol isn't the safest thing or isn't a healthy thing for them, maybe this is an alternative. So I think it's going to end up being part of a set of options for people, and I think you're seeing the market reflect that's becoming reality.
So talk to us about this partnership with Cronos and what that means for you and how much money there is to be made.
Yeah, so if you look at what Ginkgo does, right, we're a provider of biotech services, essentially, right? So I did my PhD in bioengineering. What we have over at Ginkgo down the street here in Boston, about 100,000 square foot facility with automated robots that do a lot of the work that I did during my PhD, right? And it brings the cost down for doing biotechnology. So a company like Cronos, who historically doesn't have biotech, they can turn to Ginkgo and say, Ginkgo, take care of this for me. Come back and hand me that brewer's yeast that makes CBD oil or whatever it is without having to grow this big farm, and then I could have brewery economics instead of farming economics, right? And so the deal with Cronos is they fund R&D work here at Ginkgo, and if we're successful, we would receive about $100 million of stock. Now today, the stock went up probably about 20-25% after announcing the deal, but somewhere close to $150 million of stock for us if we were successful.
Meantime, Tesla stock is down, but that's another story. Elon Musk stirring the pot, as always. Ginkgo Bioworks CEO and co-founder Jason Kelly. Fascinating stuff you're working on. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, Facebook's complicated relationship status with the public and investors. Can the social network recover? We'll talk to an activist shareholder next. This is Bloomberg. We're watching Facebook after COO Sheryl Sandberg testified before the U.S. Senate on Wednesday. The social network has had a rocky 2018 so far, from data privacy scandals to lawmaker scrutiny and slowing user growth. Shares of Facebook have been hit hard since that one-day plunge on the back of earnings in July. So can Facebook recover? If so, how? We are joined by Natasha Lam, Managing Director at Arjuna Capital, a shareholder in Facebook. And Natasha, you've been flagging some of these content issues for a couple of years. And I'm curious, what was your takeaway from these hearings in which Sheryl Sandberg testified and started answering for some of the things you've been raising over the last couple of years?
I mean, one, I think, all of this is such fallout from issues that the company, we were hoping the company would get ahead of. And it seems that we're just constantly, it's this defensive posturing, and with and just chasing the issues. I think it's interesting, being called to testify before Congress is, it's not a proactive approach to change. It's a bit of a tail between your legs exercise, right? You're being called onto the carpet. I was happy to see Jack Dorsey there from Twitter, disappointed that Larry Page wasn't there. And I thought it was interesting that Sandberg was there instead of Zuckerberg, just that it kind of got kicked down from the CEO level. which makes me question, if they're really showing it as central of an issue as it was, after Cambridge Analytica.
What do you make of Sandberg's level of sincerity? I mean, she said for a lot of the things that these lawmakers were asking about, the rules are already in place. She was very contrite. Do you think she's being sincere?
I think she's being sincere. I think that they're trying. Since we started flagging these issues, a lot has happened. A lot of investment has been made. I was concerned to hear her discuss, how false and misleading information is being treated on the platform. She was describing the fact that, if something is false information, they move it down the feed, and then they present what she called alternative facts, that Facebook presents alternative facts. And I thought it was so curious that that wasn't caught, because, there are facts and there are opinions. There are not alternative facts. And, I hope we're not bending to the playbook of Kellyanne Conway, of Rudy Giuliani, in even entertaining that notion. So I was disappointed to hear that from her testimony.
As soon as she said those two words, alternative facts, my antenna went up. Do you think
yes.
these issues...
I'm glad yours did.
It did. Are these issues, is this a public image problem or is this a business problem? Because analysts and investors have often told us these are two separate issues, when in fact, this public image problem can certainly affect the business, in my view.
Absolutely. I mean, they're not separate. Businesses do not exist in a bubble. A lot of the negative things that have happened over the platform, we might consider externalities if we were thinking about, a big oil company polluting the oceans and the air. But these externalities, the negative things, everything from fake news, election interference, the hate speech, the violence, harassment over the platforms, these are real business issues. And when Cambridge Analytica, when the scandal really hit and the public was aware about how their data was compromised, that has had reputational impacts. And the fallout from that, there was a recent Pew study that showed that 44% of young Americans have deleted Facebook. That a quarter, 1 in 4 Americans in general have deleted it, and that 75% have either deleted it, have changed their privacy settings, or they've gone on a Facebook hiatus and gone off of the platform and taken a break. That is where we get concerned because it's on the revenue side, right? Their brand matters, and whether their users trust the brand matters. And even Sandberg in her testimony said, trust is the cornerstone of our business. Clearly, that has been eroded given the numbers that we saw come out of Pew. So you can't separate the impact. And when we look at what's happening right now, operating margins are going down. We think those are necessary investments, right? Because they have to fix Facebook, and they need to make investments to do so. But on the revenue side, that's where you can go from king one day to no longer. So that's where we're concerned.
So you're still shareholders in Facebook. Why?
Well, we'd like to see the company turn around. We think that there's value there. They have an almost monopolistic position in this space. We think that that's under threat, and because it is a risk. I mean, we're underweighted versus the benchmark. We're underweight versus the S&P because of that. So while we're still participating in Facebook, we want to be active shareholders. We want to engage our clients' capital to get the company to change. Not only on this issue, which is a content governance issue, we've also engaged the company on gender pay equity for the last 3 years. We think that there is opportunity for the company to turn it around. But I do think it's going to take more than, being called to the carpet. They need to start engaging their investors in a more meaningful way, having conversations. And I think because, it's a bit of an ivory tower at Facebook, much like it is at Google, where, the insiders control over 50% of the vote at the annual meeting. So what happens, tends to be dominated by insiders, and there's little interest in really engaging in a meaningful way with investors.
All right, Arjuna Capital's Natasha Lam, always appreciate your candor here on the show. Thank you so much for stopping by. Well, this weekend on Bloomberg Television, we'll bring you our best interviews from the week, including our conversation with 23andMe CEO Ann Wojcicki. We will hear how the Silicon Valley genetic testing site has high hopes about a new partnership with Big Pharma. This is Bloomberg. Twitter has permanently banned conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and his website InfoWars from the platform. The company says new tweets and videos have come to light which breached their abusive behavior policy. Joining us to discuss from Washington, we have our Bloomberg tech reporter Celina Wang, who covers Twitter and was in the tech hearings this week where Dorsey and Sandberg testified. Alex Jones was there as well. So Celina, what changed?
It's been a pretty decisive decision that he's made, and the timing couldn't be more interesting. It does come just a day after he testified for 8 hours in front of the Senate and then the House. And now Twitter says that Alex Jones's account went through the standard processes. He had several warnings. You'll remember that he was required to delete some violating tweets. Just a few weeks ago, his account was suspended for an entire week. And after the violation from a post yesterday, Twitter decided that it was time for him to receive the most onerous punishment, which is a permanent suspension. That means none of his accounts can be reviewed globally, that he's not allowed to make new accounts anymore, and he is permanently kicked off the platform.
So, Celina, what do you make of the timing here? Is there any possibility that Twitter didn't want to do this before Jack Dorsey was about to testify to congressional lawmakers about shadow banning conservatives and decided to do it afterwards instead?
What's interesting is that when I talked to the company, they say that Jack Dorsey actually played no role in this ultimate decision, that it went through the regular process of their global review team, of their trust and safety staff, and that they determined this was the next step for the escalating action and enforcement. Now, we can't see the video that he posted anymore that was violating their rules, but he was actually harassing a CNN reporter just outside of the congressional hearings while the testimonies were ongoing, and Twitter decided that whatever he said was terrible enough to violate their abuse policies. I do think it's interesting that this comes at such a critical time for this company when they have people on the far left, on the far right, and everyone in between scrutinizing every action they make. During the hearings yesterday, the House surprisingly didn't really touch on Alex Jones very much, and the testimony really focused more on trying to understand Twitter's enforcement policies and how their algorithms work, rather than trying to pin them down on very specific examples. And it's also important to remember here that this isn't the first high-profile account that Twitter has banned. You'll remember in years past, they banned Milo Yiannopoulos, they banned Chuck Johnson, who is a conservative blogger, also conspiracy theorist, and they also banned rapper Azalea Banks.
Celina, how is the Twitter sphere responding to this?
The Twitter sphere is all over the place, as it always is. One of the challenges of being an employee, an executive at Twitter, is that every little movement they make is heavily scrutinized, and Twitter has tried to become more transparent and post the play-by-play of how they're thinking through these issues. I was just scrolling through Twitter right now looking at the latest commentary, and Shannon Coulter, who leads this consumer advocacy group, and she had previously asked thousands of her Twitter followers to basically block all of the Fortune 500 companies from their profiles to basically make Twitter feel the financial burn of failing failing to ban Alex Jones. And I just saw she tweeted that she has removed her block list, and she's very excited that Twitter is taking this very ethical and moral action. Now, on the other hand, the Twitter sphere is also up in arms that Jack Dorsey is caving into political pressures, that they are silencing conservative voices. A lot of folks on Twitter are hearkening back to what Trump said, since he has called out social media very specifically on this issue for deplatforming these right-wing accounts.
Well, this certainly won't be the last explosion of the Twitter sphere, I'm sure. Celina, I know you'll continue to follow the story. Bloomberg's Celina Wang in Washington, who covers Twitter for us. And that does it for this special edition of Bloomberg Technology from Boston. Next week, it's Apple's big event. Wednesday, we'll have special coverage, a show at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to bring you all the headlines as they happen, and a full wrap-up of analysis and announcements on Bloomberg Technology at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's all for here. I'm Emily Chang. This is Bloomberg.